I remember exactly 4 things about our relationship. Now that it's past, it doesn't really exist anymore, except in the specific words I remember. Any trace of skin or atom of you has been washed away by bath bombs from Lush. I'm clutching at hairs I find below the sink. One of us might as well have died. The first thing I remember is you asking what my name was, and the blank look on your face when I replied, Medea.
The second thing I remember is your nail tracing my collarbone, wondering if it's meant to be there.
The third thing I remember is you teaching my son to walk, then passing him back to me. The last thing I remember is you coming into my bed, looking at me just above the eyes. You said, "Sometimes I hear you in the other room and I think that you're crying, but you're just laughing."
Every piece of clothing I put on. I can't seem to wear anything meaningless. I don't want my body as revenge. I can't wear black. I can't wear white. I can't wear red. I can't wear makeup and I can't not wear it.
Eyes are following me in the street. I'm not walking straight. My breath is hoarse from cigarettes. People move past me faster. Stray hairs blow across my face.
Smile, love, it can't be that bad, he says, hands in jean pockets.
I want to shout back. How about you shove your cock up your own asshole? Maybe then I'll smile.
But I don't say that. That would be crude.
You know when men wear white and you can see their nipples? If you told me to smile, I would smile for you.
Maybe.
I feel my skin cells fall and die, and nothing replaces them. Nothing I drink can replenish the tears I've lost. Every hair that falls out in the shower won't regrow. So desperate for your approval that my eyelashes are ripped, scars forming in the lines of my face. Trash and nothing. Scum. Nothing.
I've been told I'm overdramatic. I don't see it myself.
You came in one day and performed this pantomime of leaving me. I wanted to laugh at you. That might hurt you back. So sincere in your concern for my well-being. For the children, my love. For the children. I almost believed you thought it was for the best, until I saw her plumped lips. The other woman that you've chosen.
Puckered like a whore, but somehow demure.
That's a fine line she treads for you.
I'm making your kids fat.
They're eating a lot of ready meals and snacks. I can't cook for them. I'm too busy plotting your suffering and destruction and all that. It takes a lot of time to brood on how I'm going to end you. I can't have anyone fluffing around me, asking me for things, making noise and wanting me to think straight. I suspect this is the straightest I've ever thought. I want you, or I want you dead. No shades of grey.
The thing about not being married is that you still own everything that's yours and they still own everything that's theirs. This isn't much use if you own nothing. It's sad because I would be so good at playing the wife, out for revenge in the court, counting his money with my pointed nails, watching him curse the day he said no to prenup. I'd wear red, do my hair nice, rub it in, get full custody, and watch him cry.
I don't have a red dress, and my hair is thin. sat frozen on the floor in the hall, wondering what man you are to ruin me like this. Letter on the floor in front of me. You'd think I'd scrunch it into a ball, but I've laid it out carefully.
You had it all planned out. New wife, evict the old one.
Lawyers?
Councilmen.
All against me.
I took your eviction notice to the city and had it framed. I've put it above the front door so everyone knows what you're doing to me.
I showed it to our boys. Look how Dad is making me leave you.
It's not me. I don't want to.
They're too young to decide whose fault it is. Little faces asking if I'm okay. I hold them too hard. I don't feel sorry.
I could crush their little skulls.
Then I catch myself, horrified, and I kiss their faces. The urge to stamp on a delicate flower. I find myself weeping. I didn't mean it. I love them.
No matter how distant you were, I never thought this would happen.
You call me childish, wanting love to be enough. A drama queen, a hopeless romantic.
I play the same songs over and over. Shameless heartache. They are dignified in despair. I can be too.
I sat on the wall outside our house and counted stars, but you didn't come home that night. I knew where you were, but I still stayed, hoping she wasn't real. Every time a little bit of faith chipped off of me. You want a pretty thing to fuck, but I'm no one's pretty thing. It's just not enough for you.
I never said you had to go. We could put you up in the guest house, that way the children could still see you.
And you would have lived in your Barbie dream house with your lady while I rotted in a shed.
Employed to be their mother, paid to be comfortable and silent. She put a stop to that though, didn't she?
She couldn't have me haunting the life that she stole.
So I trashed the guest house, scratched the walls, poured gasoline on the bed and threatened to burn it.
Slashed the curtains.
Smashed the windows.
Pulled all the plugs from the walls.
Flooded the bathroom.
But hey,
all the usual things.
I'm angry, not creative.
Somehow, after this, people came to the conclusion that I wasn't fit to be a parent, as if I'm the first mummy or daddy to lose their temper a little bit.
I pulled a muscle in my wrist, which was the last injury I expected to have.
The offer of staying in the guest house was rescinded. I was given the chance to stay and I burned it. One rash decision. And suddenly you control whenever I see my children.
Then you come home and I'm paralyzed. I don't move like I should. I have to tell my fingers to grasp. If I look too hard at you, I'll scream. I'm burning through the back of my head. Can't believe in anything good. No one else could make me feel this. Nothing. Trash. Scum. Nothing.
No one intervened on behalf of
They've asked for a special breakfast today because Daddy is home. They asked nicely. It's those rainbow loop things that the younger one loves so much. He doesn't like the brown ones, he says. They're not as nice. The yellow ones are nice and the pink ones are nice, but the dark brown ones are disgusting. He picks them out of the bowl. There's one. There's one. That one's broken. There's one. There's one. There's one. There's one. There's one. He eats a blue one. He thinks he's got them all. Nope. There's one. He wants the milk now, the purple one. It's the nicest. We don't have the purple one, so he has to have the green. The green isn't nice, he says, but that's all we have, so he has to have the green. He eats with his mouth closed. That's good. But he talks. He says the yellow ones are made of yellow flowers, and the pink ones are made of white flowers, and the brown ones are made of shit. Don't say that! That's rude! Stop laughing! Where did you learn that word? Me, he says. When did he hear me say shit?
I'm surprised you haven't said something about how I should be more careful. You shouldn't say things like this around the boys, but stop caring. It won't matter when I'm out of your way. I moved the television into the kitchen, which I knew you wouldn't like. That's why I did it. There's something awful on it. The noise is going straight through me, and I can't latch on to the words. Jason can't stand it. I know what you look like when you're still deciding what you don't approve of. A woman is shouting she's missing teeth, shouting at a man who is also missing teeth. The noise is going straight through me, and Jason turns it off. He doesn't want the boys saying that. I know they shouldn't. He tries to look at me. He pats their heads. 1 and 2. Pat, pat. My eyes are stinging.
Can't we be civil?
They think they have you for the day, but they don't. The boys beg you to stay. It's nauseating. Fingers pinched on the corners of your shirt. 1 is 8, the other is 6.
You can't trade them in for ones that don't look like me. Their eyes are yours and they watch me too. Trade me in, then tell me to be civil. You are inhuman.
They found my brother wrung like poultry on the 2nd floor. The blue tips of his fingers a limp inch from the top stair. He rose into view. I left him there because you made it safe. He was in your way and I loved you. You told me my family wanted what you wanted, but you deserved it, and I had to stop them. I did, in a way. My brother found the fleece and I took it from him. Made sure he couldn't try and take it back. You can't always keep what you love. You didn't come there looking for me, but you found me. 16 and toes dipped in mountain streams, blessed by something, hunting for dragons, playing with witches.
Run with me.
So I ran. My family never came after me. Denied me a child for 16 years. All I wanted was a little you. Now that's what I'm afraid we've made. 2 little yous.
Life is better in England, I promise you.
You said. There were no dragons. I was weaker. A god's gift going to waste over a marble countertop. Slicks of mascara, and you still wouldn't marry me.
We don't need to prove anything.
I never thought of how dependent I was on you. If I went home, I'd be killed. They know what I did. Maybe that's what you hope for. No bitter words from a silent mouth.
I leave the boys home alone, which I shouldn't. You granted me a sum for the week, and I'm going to spend it as stupidly as I can in Harrods.
I could buy the boys one of those giant soft toys just to piss you off. A full-size polar bear called Jeff. He'd sit proudly in the hallway waiting for visitors to chomp. And every time you visit, another smaller polar bear just appears next to him until the hallway is filled with all his fluffy babies. And I just deny they're even there.
I drift up the golden escalator and wonder what would happen if your foot got stuck in the top and you were slowly ground into the steps, feet first macerating, and you scream for my help, but I watch your body getting mashed into a... Oh, I have to get off the escalator now.
What domestic paradise is this? Everything you meant for me. There's a food processor with an attachment for home emulsifying. I could have made mayonnaise.
But I settle on a £200 multi-purpose kitchen knife. It's titanium or something for all your cutting and slicing needs.
Just wait until I see you.
Sorry, Jason, there's no food for the rest of the week, but watch me gut this butternut squash like a pro.
If you don't want your children going hungry, then you best give me more.
I queue for the tills. There are 2 superior women in front of me. They look like what I thought you would make me into, preened and careful. I was always going to lose. I don't own a pantsuit. I imagine I can join in their little conversation.
Sammy is starting ballet. Frederick is leaving home. Oh, how they grow up.
There are only so many ways a parent can subtly boast to another, and they are finding them all.
It's becoming a challenge to fit everything in. I keep telling Hugh we're not going to host another dinner party until we can do it properly. I mean, we do have 3 refrigerators.
I remember now why I don't come here. My gods are not here, just stainless steel, patent leather and other reflective surfaces. My own hall of mirrors. Nowhere to hide.
I come home, I run a bath, and I shout at the kitchen cupboard like it's got feelings. Fuck you, kitchen cupboard, fuck you. The hinges are loose. It looks pathetic to me now. So I tighten them with a screwdriver you kept in a drawer by the sink, and then I throw the screwdriver out of the window because it's yours and I don't want it in my face!
Mum, why?
I don't have an explanation for what you just saw. I can't explain to an 8-year-old why his mother just threw a screwdriver out of the window. I catch him looking out there the next day, trying to find answers. I didn't even look where I was throwing. It could have landed in someone's eye. Imagine that surprise. Screwdriver in the eye.
I followed Jason one day so that I could see her.
The city got denser and the buildings higher. I finally understood.
These buildings still run by marriage, doors open on a ring and a promise, fathers and daughters, hands in back pockets.
I'd seen this man, Creon, before, but not his daughter. Little thing with polished nails.
Creon is a respected man, so are you. It makes sense. Her smile for you is a true one.
She is Glauci, daughter of Creon, heir to probably a lot of things.
Graceful and even-tempered, and her makeup is as perfect on the left as it is on the right.
She waits for traffic lights, laughs lightly.
Holds onto arms, had dental work.
Eats quinoa porridge, not religious, but spiritual.
Healthy joints.
Hair vitamins.
Mole on her left cheek.
High heels.
Charming because she doesn't speak.
Little eyebrows.
See how I make you hate her.
He wants her to be their mother.
I watch her fill her day with delicacy. She stirs the foam in her coffee, making little peeps. Her nails bring the hair back from her face. She doesn't have to feel it with her fingertips.
I imagine them scratching my eyes. She wouldn't have blood spill on a white dress. Her skin, her pure skin.
The roots of my hair are thick. The sun doesn't break through. She is translucent. The pavement rises to her where she walks. Doors are held and crowds part like the Red Sea.
I move through her city as a beacon of something they fear, waiting for the parted sea to swallow me. My gods are not here. Nothing will hold for me.
Her left foot is angled outwards when it lands. She has grown into an imbalance that might cripple her if she grows old.
A gentle swing of hip. After so many days, I can catch it from the corner of my eye from 100 yards away.
I only wanted to see what she did that was so much better.
School finished an hour ago. I'm still staring at the wall. 5 missed calls. I think that makes me a bad mother. If anything does, it's definitely this.
The longer I
Stay
stay
where you
here,
are.
the better my excuse needs to be.
I got stuck in traffic.
I fell asleep.
There was an emergency.
I was staring at a wall.
Not sure they care.
6. My boy. I'm waiting to see when they'll call him instead of me. An hour later, he comes. Not a happy Jason.
Where have you been? How could you leave him there?
You're asking me that? How could I leave him? How nice of you to step in.
I look down and expect to see blood coming through my shirt, but there's nothing there.
You always wear white shirts.
The boys still see that version of you that I did.
They're not safe with you anymore.
He wasn't in danger. He was just waiting.
No one right in the head would do this to their children.
At least I'm actually here.
What are you trying to prove? You think this will bring back anything?
No, I wanted to show you what scared feels like.
You showed them, my sons.
It took them 2 hours to even think of you. 2 hours. That's how much you matter.
He thinks he can raise them better than me. A shiny, new mother. They're too young to notice, he thinks. They'll grow up and forget that crazy bitch. That crazy fucking bitch snake demon.
My boy is drawing strange things. The younger, not the older. He just scribbles in black.
I worry I've polluted him. The older one talks more. He asks more questions. Who is that lady with the shiny hair? Why does she come here?
I'm woken one morning by the sounds of wheels on gravel, doors slamming. I hear Jason's voice through the window, dream like it drains me. I want to see you. Why do you come here when you know I'm all out of words and faces for you? There are loud clunking noises. My curiosity pushes me out of bed. I'm not dressing for you. You can deal with me in my pajamas.
A lorry?
Piles of boxes.
You're not moving any of them yourself.
I see an oak chest of drawers, a long mirror.
You
Trunks
catch
with
my eye.
delicate gold detail.
And you catch my eye as my bare foot touches the gravel.
A spike of pain in the ball of my foot. I don't acknowledge it.
I hold your gaze for a moment.
I think you feel sorry for me, just for a moment. Your head drops. You don't feel shame. You just don't have the heart to deal with me. I'm an inconvenience, an obstacle.
These are her things. You're bringing her trinkets into our home before I've even left. So confident that I'll be out of the way, that I won't chain myself to the door. I know there's no way of holding you hostage, dangling your new life in front of me. Powerless Medea! You'll have me carried off at your will. I will root myself to your ground. There is soil underneath this concrete palace you made, water waiting in the bones of creatures greater than you. They will rise for me. They will grow into my limbs. And you may build around me, but I will always be here, torturing the edges of your bliss, bleaching the split ends of her hair, and breathing poison into the walls!
I don't say any of this out loud, of course. I retreat in silence. Let the men carry her things into my home. Kitchen, living room, bedroom. She's labelled them all in her precise little cursive. The gravel's made little patterns on the sole of my feet. You tell me nothing could get in your way, as if you could possibly know that. Gone, before I can say, come back, I want you to fight me. At least then we'll be feeling something together.
Don't let the boys touch anything.
is the only thing you say. On the threshold of the house, there's a square of concrete you left uncovered. I tripped before it was dry and my toe fell in it. The little dent made you laugh. I think you've forgotten about it. I've covered it with a potted geranium and I hope you don't remember it.
She hasn't come to face me yet. What a pretty coward! I could so easily take all of her things, put them into a dusty pile in the garden and really set them alight this time. I'd watch the silk curl into ashes and the pine wood scream. I find a hairbrush in one of her boxes with a tangle of satin strands. It smells like Chanel. I extract them one by one and lay them out carefully. My first son's baby hair fell out in clumps, so I put it in a box. It was thin, but dark. Short-lived, but strong.
I'm backed into a corner, and you own the walls. Our boys are my only shield. You have made me put them between us. You are bricking me in. I'm sweating and I'm coughing in the dust and cement, but I will not let go of their hands.
Weeks pass. 4 weeks until the wedding. I need time. I don't have answers. You've rushed it.
But your lawyer was once a friend of mine, as well as ours.
It's not right for me to speak to you. How did you get in here?
I walked through the door.
You should leave now.
I want to offer you something.
That's not how this works, I'm afraid.
Your wife is sterile.
How did you?
A man will see what he expects to see until you choose to reveal something more. One touch of divinity, and all you can do is drop your lower lip. There are no truths or lies or secrets in the realm of the gods.
If you wish for a child, a true one of your blood and hers, you need only give me time. Let me say goodbye to my children, and you will have one of your own.
I can delay the eviction for 5 weeks. That's all I have.
You will have much more now. I shed a tear into a glass, and I hand it to him.
I know how to appear sweet when I need to, and Jason is stupid enough to believe it. I smile and give thanks, gather my things, give blessing. He swallows it.
You seem well.
I've just come to accept that things are as they are.
I'm happy for you. There's colour in your cheeks again.
I didn't mean for things to get like that. I'm sorry, Jason.
I forgive you. The children will forgive you too.
You had every chance.
It becomes clear the choice you've left me with. I tried to ignore it, bury it at the back of my wardrobe, under the sink, in the cupboard under the stairs. I switch off the lights, but the thought comes back to me, no matter how hard I swat it away.
Weeks pass. I am quiet, compliant, patient. Any doubts you had are whittled away by false smiles and colour in my cheeks. You are comfortable, not watching your back anymore. I'm no longer clawing at it.
There's a pain in the left side of my head. It's under my ear. It makes me shake. I feel my body is trying to stop me. It swells in the night. I sit cross-legged like a toddler on the floor, gripping my hair, willing it to fall out. Let me melt away before I do something so foul. Let me disintegrate. Mold me into stone walls so that my rage may form cracks in the rock that will scar forever. Bury me in earth so that it may choke my lungs, so they scream no more for my sons. May Hecate guide me. She alone will judge me.
Jason is married in the daytime.
In the bright, in open space.
Boastfully and joyfully.
I watch from upstream. I will always taint the water before it gets to him. She takes a drink and she tastes my remains on the lip of his glass.
She will never be his first, as I wasn't, nor the girl before me. But he likes this one. I can see it.
He lifts her veil with no patience and basks in her glow.
The reception is lavish.
That is his taste. Guests he's never spoken to.
Fathers and mothers.
People he wouldn't introduce me to.
Satin is too shiny. It reflects the light into my eyes.
I wear red lipstick to blend in. Look valuable, but no one sees me as I choose for them not to.
I brush their shoulders and they only feel the air past them. I'm a peripheral they can't notice.
She spins in the center of the hall. He holds her fingers, smiles locked.
He taps her skin as she moves, a constant reminder that he's there.
It's comforting, possessive.
My arms clench around my waist.
Flutters of doubt.
Her white shawl falls. She picks it up and lays it on the back of the chair. It droops, then stills.
I clutch her hairs in my hand, and what I will shall be so.
I feel my feet vibrate against the floor, my thumping heart pulled back together for its final purpose.
I wait until I feel numb.
The evening dies. They begin to tire.
She wraps her shawl around her thin neck, which starts to slowly burn. She clutches, but it sears to her skin, choking. Those around her find they cannot scream.
She made her choice. I watch her white perfection fall through. Nothing is left.
Jason is helpless.
A knowing look on his face.
Hurt, but not yet enough.
He won't
guests-
stay at this spectacle for long.
Finally regain their lungs. I give them back so they may drown.
His despair fuels me all the way back to what was my home.
The air is dark and moist. I take off my shoes so my feet make no sound. Quiet, resolved. In the end, this is what needs to be done. A glint of metal in my hand. There must be light coming in from somewhere. It would sparkle in their eyes if they were open. My body made them, and my body will end them. The elders first. No shout, no run, no beg. Just a slash across the neck. 1 and 2. This is where he finds me, draped over the lifeless faces of our sons, red dripping to the floor. I thought he would kill me, but his strength is gone. Jason is speechless with tears. The dead are limp, and so are the grieving. I am weeping for their loss, whether you believe me or not. I am sorry for them. You should never have broken me.
All of this was you, no one else.
You tell yourself that when your demons keep you from sleep. I hope they all look like me. He fears me now. As the air breathes me in, whips and turns my prayers. Jason will not bury them. They will stay with me. He will have empty graves to mourn. My boys. The walls crack, the sunlight pierces through, and mountain streams flood every room. He pleads for the gods, but my dragons have found me to end this mortal joke. Take me, take my sons, let us burn beyond ashes till nothing is left but my hatred in your waking nightmares.
Don't say you never loved me.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for watching this evening's production of Medea Live by Wendy Haines, performed by SJ Brady, Sinead Costelloe and Rosa Whicker. Stay tuned for a few minutes. We'll be having a post-show discussion, so you just have time to go and top up your glass of wine or glass of water or cup of tea. So please do stay tuned. That'll be starting in just a few minutes. If you enjoyed tonight's production and you'd like to support the company, you can find information about our Patreon below the video, or if you'd like to think about making just a one-off donation, you can also do that in the description below. We're also pleased to announce that this is not our only piece of lockdown theatre that we'll be putting out. On the 12th of July, we'll be releasing a radio play version of 2017's Here She Comes by SJ Brady, an epic poem based on the Bacchae. That'll be made available alongside a podcast discussing the poem and Euripides' Bacchae on which it is based. So those will both be available on the 12th of July. You can follow us on social media for more information about how to access those when they come out. Otherwise, stay tuned and join us in a few minutes for the post-show discussion. Thanks again very much for watching. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the post-show discussion for Medea Live. It's me again. For anyone who came to the pre-show talk, you've already seen me once this evening, but for those who haven't, my name's Christine Plastow. I'm one of the Associate Directors of By Jove, and I'm also a lecturer in classical studies at the Open University. So for this post-show talk, I'm going to be joined by three guests. We're going to have Professor Nancy Rabinowitz, who's a professor of comparative literature at Hamilton College in New York State. We're going to have Dr. Emma Cole, who is a lecturer in classics and liberal arts at the University of Bristol. And we're going to have Marcus Bell, who is a movement practitioner and choreographer and a PhD. He's currently studying a PhD on choruses in ancient Greek tragedy. So I'm really happy to be joined by all of our three guests.
Hi.
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 Hello, everybody. So I think we'll just start off by saying, did you enjoy the show? What are your initial reactions? Maybe we'll start with Nancy.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting me, first of all, to participate. Good to see you all. So I thought, let me be frank. I was dubious, because I've seen, a lot of music, more music. And but anyway, so those doubts were I really felt it overcame the inherent limitations of, people being separate. And I thought that I thought it went really well. And it was quite, exciting for me because I've been working with Rhodessa Jones from the Medea Project for a long time. And one of the things that we've been talking about is where she got the idea for naming the Medea Project. So it's all been very much on my mind. I'll say more later. So, yeah, but I want to say that about the doubts because I think it's important. A lot of people will wonder, how this is going to pan out. So I thought that you used it really well. Yeah, what do others think?
Maybe Emma, we could go to.
I absolutely agree that it was really impressive, and I think a big congratulations is due to all the performers and also the tech team behind the scenes. It seems to me that a lot of the online offerings during the pandemic have been putting up archival material for a limited time, perhaps like the National's been doing, putting up streams for a week at a time. And some of that's been amazing. I know that there's some German theatres that have been putting up really old productions from the 70s and 80s, which people usually wouldn't be able to access without an archival trip. But even so, because these are archival streams that are being put online, you're not getting that live experience that you would usually have for the theatre. And I was just blown away, actually, by how it worked, not only watching it with, I think there were about 80 or 90 people on the stream, but having that sense of community or watching the same thing together, but also how well it worked in terms of the tech and the way that the screens moved around. I really thought that sometimes it was almost like it was circling in, spiraling in to kind of Medea's psychosis. I was really impressed with how that came together.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it before the show, and I was really impressed by that. Maybe we can go to Marcus for any initial thoughts.
Hi everyone. Thank you again for inviting me to be a part of this. I guess like Nancy, I think I could feel that there was definitely a risk being taken in kind of putting the show on in this kind of way, having it live and streamed over the internet with 80 participants through YouTube. There's always this kind of feeling that something might go wrong. And I think I agree with Emma that that gave something of witnessing theatre again in the pandemic, which hasn't been present in some of these archival experiences that we've had. I was lucky enough to see the 2017 run of this show in the gallery at the corner. And I was really happy to see the different ways in which kind of that intimacy was created. Like you were saying, Chrissy, before, we were kind of in Medea's space in that gallery. Her bed took up the majority of that room. And really in this version, we were allowed into the 3 different Medea spaces in a kind of really exciting way. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed the experience.
So in the original were the staged versions 3 Medeas as well?
Yes, the same cast, exactly the same cast. And yes, it was performed in the gallery on the corner in Tooting in South London. And the Medeas kind of moved through and with the audience around the space. The audience was standing around the space and Medeas could kind of push through them and get to where they wanted to go. And so it was that really kind of claustrophobic and intimate setting. And that was one of the things we were interested to see if we could capture in a digital stream, you know, where by the very nature of the medium, you are at a distance from people, but you also have this kind of boxed in feeling that I think actually is quite conducive to generating those kind of claustrophobic types of feelings. So Marcus, I know you just said that you saw the original show in 2017. How do you feel like it's developed since then? What do you feel like came through or might have changed since that show?
The big change is not having the 3 bodies of 3 Medeas in the space with us. And as you say, kind of they had control really over that space. There was this really kind of awareness that you were being invited into their space, and kind of there was a sense of danger really there of what might happen or what might go on throughout the rest of the production. There were scenes of kind of lip syncing and dancing and a lot of movement. So I was interested in the ways that kind of was translated into this production. And I felt that we did still get a sense of danger coming across, but as you say, through kind of the confinement of the screen, it felt like we were in like a YouTube confessional at some points, or that we'd kind of stumbled across Medea's phone and we were flipping through these videos, slowly being like told this horrifying story of what had happened. And I was just kind of interested in this production. I think the big change was who is in control, because the cameras were switching. Like Emma was saying, we were like circling slowly more and more into this kind of psychosis. But I was always asking myself, okay, what system is performing these maneuvers, is like making these alterations or changing the frame, or that, I mean, the eclipse, the glowing orb that played music or kind of allowed voice to come through, I thought was a really interesting innovation from the original performance.
Yeah, I thought that it was really interesting, that kind of change of perspective from being sort of on Medea's level, if you like, with her physically there with you, to sort of this weird bird's eye view where you're looking in on her or she's looking out at you, and there's something quite evocative about that angle, I think. So one of the questions that we were sort of exploring with this piece, or Wendy was certainly exploring when she wrote it, and that we were exploring in 2016 and 2017 when we staged this piece as part of our series of violent women, is, you know, why are we interested in characters like Medea? Why are we interested in stories of violence, stories of women who commit acts of violence? You know, this play was first staged in 431 BCE. Why can't we let go of her after all that time? You know, what's still interesting to us about her, I wonder. If anyone wants to,
well,
Emma or Nancy, yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, of course, you know, it's very much not the tech person here. So, you know, I've worked on the Medea in a book about women in Euripides. And so it's been a long-standing interest. But as I started to say before, it's come up again where, you know, these women in prison were first introduced to Medea by Rosa Jones. And what, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Okay. I just lost you for a minute. Can you see me? I can't see you. Anyway, so we were just talking about how it started, and is it okay? It's a kind of long story. Do you want to hear it? How she started?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So this woman was, so she went into the jails for the first time in order to teach aerobics, because that's what she was hired to do. And she was looking for people to participate. So she would go into the room, and they would be in cells or cages, as she called it. And she would be trying to interest them in doing this project with her. And in the back was this woman who was just sitting there and saying, nobody can judge me, nobody can judge me, only God can judge me. And so when she asked what it was up with her, she'd killed her own child in a cocaine-induced fury. And the other women were livid, furious with her. You know, so she started to ask exactly, well, where are your children? How are we all killing our children? And that's where she brought the story in. She had been, watching the film version of it. And so I think that it's, for me, it's always, that's what I think is that there are two parts of it that really strike home in the myth. And one is what women give up for men still, for male approval, but she doesn't need, right? She's totally not dependent in the beginning. But these women in jail are often very dependent on men, and what they give up for them and how they end up in jail for doing drugs for these guys often. And then in this sense, where their children and families end up when they're in jail, and how in fact they've been abandoned. And Rodessa really pointed out to them that you're not with your kids, you're not so much better than this woman. They really wanted to distance themselves from her. So that's just to get it started,
Touching upon women whose lived experience does interact in, even if it's just in a skewed way, with Medea's story is a really interesting point. One of the things for me that makes Medea so fascinating is not so much the act of killing her children, because that act obviously is horrific, but it's also such an extreme circumstance. The reality is that there are very, very few women who do kill their children. The most common reason for infanticide is usually gross neglect rather than a kind of deliberate act like what Medea does. And so for me, it's not the act that she does in the play, but it's the early episodes of the play that make her so relatable and so fascinating. And that, I think, was something which was brought out so well in this production. Mm-hmm. The relationship with Jason and exactly what it is that she's given up for him, and then what he in turn does to her. And it's that kind of domesticity of the story that I think has made it so fascinating in a lot of professional theatres and amateur theatres in kind of the late 20th, early 21st century. And I think that also made it work so well on the screen for us in this live stream, because that domesticity worked to put it in the actors' homes, to do those extreme close-ups. The kind of form and the content matched really nicely.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, no, Marcus, carry on if you want to.
I completely agree with this. The kind of idea of proximity and distance, of how close the Medea's experience might touch on something that we've experienced, or on the real lived experiences of people. I think it's why the show kind of continues to be so popular. I mean, we can look at Luis Alfaro's recent adaptation, which happened in America recently. So sweet.
Marcel's not happy.
No,
sorry, my dog was barking to get out.
Don't worry.
Live stream.
Wants to escape like Medea as well.
Talk about domesticity, yeah, brilliant.
Well, I love the look at femininity that the show takes. That this performance takes in the Harrods scene, and the makeup and all the question that the opening. The clothing, my clothing says something about me. And, I think that's there in the play, in the question of her foreignness. How does she look to those women? I mean, I think it brings out something that's it's always a question we classicists ask of, retellings of these ancient. What did you get right about the ancient? And I think that I think in the this is reveals something that's I think there subtly more to do with the foreignness. But also, in the description of her death, of course, as a classicist, I've got my text here just in case I needed it, like my security blanket. But this idea that she's got to come out to those women and get them on her side, but she can't be too different, and so she has to model this woman that she kind of later on, it's clear how much she hates the new wife and her clothing. So I thought all of that was great in the way it picked it up, and that's something I think going back to what women still give up is going on. Yeah.
And I think the fact that so many people can find so many of these different elements in the play is another reason, of course, why it's so popular, that it can be, like in the Medea project, used in a social impact setting, and then also in a much more domestic setting. It can speak to all these different audiences. This is why it has such a rich legacy.
Yeah, I think that kind of her changing faces and something that comes through with having multiple performers, and I have that. So somebody's just commented, and maybe I can see if I can share this comment here because it touches on the next question I was going to ask. So one of our viewers says, the juxtaposition of an ancient story on a very new digital stage is still striking me. And this is something I was thinking about, what do we do with Greek tragedy in the digital age, or even in the age of isolation, in the age of COVID? How do we make something new again with Greek tragedy, as of course we've been trying to do for decades, centuries, millennia, I suppose. Well, where do we go now?
Well, it's a question of why, I would ask, especially I would ask you guys in By Jove, why not write a new thing? Why go back?
It's what we ask ourselves all the time, Nancy.
Right. So I thought it would be good to hash that out.
Yeah. But I think there's something about, there's just something that captures the imagination in these stories, isn't there? There's something that we can't let go of. And maybe it is something that you can't quite put your finger on. There's something, I don't want to talk about things being transcendent, and, I think that might be pushing it a little bit far. But I think there's certainly something in the narrative form of Greek tragedy that endures because it's so simple, relatively. In a tragedy, for a start, usually what's going to happen because the story already. And so it's sort of how do you get from point A to point B? And it's always this moment of crisis that is generally quite self-contained. It's a moment in a much longer story, but it's something that's just one section of that you can, I don't know, I think it's easy to get your mind around it, much easier to get your mind around one of those narratives than it is, the whole story of Medea that I was telling in the pre-show talk that, spans from she's the granddaughter of Helios all the way through to, are the Medes named after her? And everything she does. I mean, Jason's a blip in her radar, really, in the end of it. But you get these little fragments. I don't know if anyone else thinks that that's a reason for the endurance of Greek tragedy and why we keep coming back to them, or maybe it's something completely different.
I do think that it speaks to the versatility of the story. What your overview of the myth really outlined for me is just how versatile this story is and how it has this history built into it of adapting to suit different formats, whether that's to suit rather a mythology that's been written down, or a play like Medea, or any other of the countless areas in which Medea was referenced in the ancient world. Her story has built into it this reception history of kind of pivoting to suit different formats. Medea, I read recently, was written for the ancient stage in 32 different plays. So we only have one that survives, Euripides' play, but there's an essay which came out, I think it was actually on Friday, by Matthew Wright from the University of Exeter, about all the different Medeas that we have fragments of. So there were so many different versions on the ancient theatre, and each one would have presented her in such a slightly different light. And that's the history of this character. So it's no surprise really that we can pivot Greek tragedy now to suit this new digital format, because we've been pivoting this story countless times across the last 2,500 years.
Yeah, I was thinking back to what you were saying in the opening, Chrissy, about how this play, the famous play that we have, which is the Euripides version, is actually already an adaptation of myths. And like you're saying, Emma, that there are so many different versions already in circulation in the ancient world, that then we're seeing this kind of reception based through whatever mediation we are encountering. And at the same time, I think it gives us the opportunity to think about what system is allowing these myths, these tragic plays, to be distributed and circulated. The reason that Medea has cultural capital is because of its position within kind of like Western traditions of theatre, or how the West has constructed itself and its kind of relationship with theatre. So at the same time as we can think about how versatile Medea is and how much it has changed and adapted, we can think about why, like Nancy's saying, kind of why has that adaptation been made? Why have people chose to adapt continuously Medea? And I think on a digital platform, on a virtual platform, we can really, really think about that, because there's so much repetition and recirculation on the internet. It's part of the kind of YouTube of a video being then circulated on Facebook, then recirculated in other spheres and medium. And I guess that's what this Medea allows us to think about in terms of kind of reception is, how many Medeas are there, and how many different spaces is she operating in, or places is she appearing in? How many living rooms or bedrooms or phone screens, laptops? Where is she?
Yeah. Oh, that's a creepy thought.
Well, I have a sort of a side note on that, which is leaving aside so working with post-colonial critical race theory in reception of classics and trying to justify it, I think that the question maybe we need to get over ourselves and say, why not? But when you say we know this story, that is that's a very specific we that knows that story. And to politicize this again for a minute, that we does not include most people now. And when Rodessa was doing this in the jail, they didn't know that story. She was bringing it to them. So then I asked her, why should you bring this canonical material, the master's tools idea? And I think her point is, she goes for the jugular on it. She says it's universal. These stories have something in them. And why should you, and then that's what Rita Dove also says, why should we deprive, we should be educating, So she used Oedipus, for example, Rita Dove. And why not? This has got cultural capital, but it's also got a history. But in the current context, I think about how much could be done around immigration, as you pointed out, or the ways in which she was strange as well as feminine. And you mentioned that at the beginning, I know, as the context for the show. And I think that I've been working on the Iphigenia amongst the Taurian, always from the perspective of gender and sexuality. But, recently, I think I was talking to you, Marcus, and we realizing that, again, this is at the border of civilization. And that's something that Edith Hall, worked on in her huge book. So I think that, it's there as material. And this story in particular is so, to use the current terminology, so intersectional that it lends itself to not just the digital, but to the political crisis, I would say, we're facing. That's my 4 cents.
Well, and there must be something sort of universal, as you said, Rodessa Jones called it, in these stories, if they can be relevant to the political climate now and to the political climate in 431 PCE, you know, that because there is something that's a different climate for sure. That's a different setting completely. And as you say, you're exactly right. You know, I talk about everyone knows these stories, and I suppose I'm thinking about an Athenian audience when I say that, really.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about probably many people who listened into this live stream, although I hope that some people who were watching this show had never heard the story of Medea before. That would be a heck of an introduction to her, I think. Although I don't know, any introduction to her is quite powerful, probably. It's not, she doesn't ease herself into your life, I don't think. Yes, we've got some people saying that they've never seen any version of Medea before. Yeah. But I like the way that Wendy updates this story and sort of puts it in the gives you the modern moments, the Fruit Loops and Harrods and those kinds of things are interesting to me, because that's how I find in this version of the story you follow Medea along her thought path. You follow her thought path. You sort of go along with her and you say, okay, well, you know, maybe you've had a crappy relationship and you've thought, God, I just want to take all of our money and go and spend it on stupid stuff, and then you don't have any food and that's your problem. Or maybe you want to throw a screwdriver out the window or whatever it is. And maybe you do get irritated with your child when they're fussing about specifically which bits of cereal they want to eat and which ones they don't. And you can follow her up to that point. And I think that's what makes it so powerful when she turns to a point that the majority of people would not follow her to, is to the act of violence in the end.
Yes. I suppose to play devil's advocate, perhaps, those parts, which I completely agree are very relatable, about, you know, tossing a screwdriver and then afterwards thinking, oh, that could have actually hit someone. I wasn't looking where I threw it. Or having children being fussy eaters. Those bits are not Euripides. And actually when the play did turn to Euripides at the wedding, when the veil was poisoned or the shawl was poisoned and then the children were killed, those bits were the Euripidean. Yeah. And that's possibly an interesting relationship there between the very relatable bits which are not part of that scaffold, which someone who might know the plot of Medea would recognize, and then the actual scaffold which the play has been hung around, of the murder of the new fiance and then of the two children.
Yeah, I was struck by the fact that she's coming to his house, and I'm thinking, no. She doesn't come to live in his house.
I guess I raised that point, being a devil's advocate, about how do I want to phrase this? I guess what I'm often hesitant about the universality point of tragedy, and I am very invested in the power of these plays and the ability for them to speak in different forms to different audiences. But I'm not always certain that the form of Attic tragedy, which is a very alien form actually for audiences today, is necessarily a universal tool.
Yeah, I push back about that word universal. So that's why I said, but I also agree, it's the story, not the play. As performed, it's very alien.
Yeah, so there was this is now going to be a useless anecdote because I can't remember what the play was or what the adaptation was, but it was a film, and it was a German film adaptation. I think it was of Antigone. I can't remember the director. It was on Mubi the other week, if anyone was watching that. But it was sort of filmed, I got the impression that it was filmed in an ancient theatre. And everyone was very static. You know, everyone was just standing still and delivering their lines, kind of looking straight ahead. And then you had the theatre the chorus come in. And okay, it was only a chorus of 3 rather than 15 or however many there might be in an ancient chorus. But it was the sort of thing that if it was a modern play that was unconnected to tragedy, people would go, wow, this is kind of weird and not naturalistic and kind of avant-garde or whatever you would call it, whatever the ancient version of avant-garde is. So you're definitely right that the form, if it was staged in the ancient form, is very kind of confronting, I think, to a modern audience. I mean, I've always thought that interestingly, the adaptations I've seen that do make things more naturalistic to what a modern audience thinks natural theatre is like, tend to connect with the audience a bit more than those that use a round stage and a building at the back and people wheeling in and out of the building at the back. Where obviously it's probably not in a Epidavros type theatre, but there's still something going on there that emulates the ancient setting, but I just don't find as effective, which is odd as, somebody who knows the ancient material, I guess. But maybe it's not odd. Maybe I'm too embedded in modern life and in what we expect from theatre from a modern perspective.
I always go back to the point that these plays were revolutionary at the time that they were staged, and because of that, I think actually they speak best to modern audiences when they're put in a revolutionary form today. You mentioned in your pre-show chat that the killing of the children in this play may have been a Euripidean innovation. And it's not just that plot point that was a Euripidean innovation. When Euripides was writing, the theatre had been through the most incredible revolutions over the past couple of decades in terms of the number of protagonists delivering dialogue on stage at any one time, the complexity of the plots which were going to be staged and the type of scene painting that might have been used. And the audiences would have been getting surprised every time that they went to the ancient theatre. And so I think that today, actually, these plays do work really well when they surprise us rather than, as you say, they put in a very formalized kind of staid type of staging, which is actually archaic to us rather than cutting edge and contemporary.
But, I don't know that much about the performance aspect, even in antiquity. But, it is also ritual. It's the theaters, the theater of the city, so I don't know. I mean, I think they were experimental, but I don't know how avant-garde I would say Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides were. But that's for another day, I think.
Avant-garde is possibly a misleading word.
I retract that statement.
But things like Euripides, I guess the fact is we know so little about theatre in the ancient world, really. People can give up their lives studying these, but we have such a small fraction of plays that survive. But things like when Euripides used the crane in this play to have Medea spirit off stage, like that maybe was one of the first instances of a mortal being able to use this. I think there would have been real shocks in the theatre.
Yeah. I'm just saying the context was fairly traditional.
Yeah, I take your point about the ritualization.
Yeah,
I think
Marcus.
I think with MRAMs and with everyone, I guess I'm really skeptical of universals or of thinking about kind of ancient Greek theatre as something universal itself or exceptionalized. And I think your point about like what are the ways in which we're imagining ancient Greek theatre? I think that's important, right? Like why? Like what is the kind of imaginative act of thinking that? And it's a great one. It's fun to think that this is the first time that someone in the theatre may have been lifted off the ground or kind of this mechanism was used in this way, or even to portray this story, or that the plot itself is an invention. Which again, I think is why it's so interesting to watch Medea do this digital format and think again about the ways in which kind of theatre can be adapted or digital performance can reform. But I think it's important, I guess, to remember that the act of universalizing something is to put in place a structure to say like this is the same everywhere or this matters everywhere, and it kind of eradicates the lots of particulars that will be excluded by that. I mean, it's not a very articulate way of kind of responding to that, but I think it's when we think about like the universality of the story, of the narrative, or how it might speak to us all, I guess it's important to think about what's at stake in thinking of like, as you said, Nancy, who are all of the us who we're thinking of that this story matters to, or who knows this story, who have some claim to this story.
If anyone watching has any questions for the panel that they want to put in the comments, we could take one or two questions. We'll probably wrap up the discussion in just a few minutes. So if anyone of the panel wants to come in on anything else while we're waiting to see if any questions come in, then please do.
Well, I guess to go back to what Marcus just said, yeah, I think it's obviously both and. If it didn't work, if it didn't touch anybody now, theaters wouldn't keep doing it, right? So, but it doesn't touch everybody in the same way. Mm-hmm. And of course, it doesn't touch everybody. I mean, and so much changes, but so much stays the same.
Yeah. For anyone watching who has tuned in for the discussion but wasn't able to watch the show or wasn't able to watch all of the show, the video will be available on YouTube after this. We'll have closed captioning as well, so if you need that for the show, that will be available. It'll be available at least until the end of the summer. The show will be up, so anyone who didn't get to watch it, or if you did watch it and enjoyed it and want to tell a friend and pass it on to somebody else, then please do. Okay, well, I think as it's 8:30 and I haven't seen any questions leap up, then maybe we will wrap up the stream. I've just got to thank a few. We've had a couple of donations come in from the one-off donations link. So thank you very much. If the people who made those donations are still watching, we're really grateful for them. And if anyone else is still watching who would like to support us, please consider taking a look at our Patreon page, patreon.com/byjove, or the link for Medea donations, bit.ly/Medea donations. They're both in the description box below this video. So thank you to panelists, Nancy, Marcus, and Emma, for all of the contributions to the discussion. I think this was a really interesting discussion to wrap up the show with. And thank you for all of everyone who watched. Thank you to the audience for joining in with the discussion, and we really hope you enjoyed the show. So this has been Medea Live by Wendy Haines from By Jove Theatre, and we hope you will see you at one of our digital or in-person shows, whenever that happens, in the future. Thanks very much for watching.